it is my absolute pleasure to welcome a friend to the studio who may be known to you already. She is an international speaker, she's a journalist, she's an author, she's a broadcaster, and she's here from Israel doing a whole host of things connected to the Israel-Gaza war and stating the case for Israel. It is Emily Schrader.
Thanks so much for having me.
Emily, it's great to have you in the studio, and thank you for looking so glorious this time of the morning.
What can I say? I love mornings. Polar opposite, to be completely honest.
Emily loves mornings.
But for you, Johnny, anything.
Anything. Anything. Who knew Emily liked mornings? Well, we'll take advantage again of that in the future. Emily, welcome. First of all, can you tell us why you are here, how long you're here for, what you're up to?
So I'm here for a series of events. I'm speaking to some of the Jewish community. I'm speaking on some of the campuses about what's going on with the Israel-Gaza war and, of course, the surge in anti-Semitism. And, you know, I have to say, the craziest part about what's happening is that London has become more anti-Semitic than Middle Eastern countries. And not just talking about Israel, of course. We deal with issues with the Palestinians. That's an internal issue. We have a war. But when we're talking about the whole Middle East, the Emirates, Bahrain, even though there are challenges after October 7th, it's not even close to what we're seeing in London. I mean, we're seeing support for Hezbollah, we're seeing support for Hamas, we're seeing support for the Islamic Republic of Iran in the streets of London. It's madness.
Do you think, as a democracy, we are being too tolerant of what appears to look like fascism?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is a problem across the board with all democratic nations right now. And that is that dictatorial regimes, authoritarian regimes, from China to Russia to Iran, or the Islamic Republic, I should say, not Iran, are taking advantage of liberal values, of free speech, of freedom of expression, and they're abusing it. And we see that nowhere more clearly than on social media. It's really a lot of this is coming from social media, because that is where extremist rhetoric is allowed to proliferate unchecked and unbalanced, of course. And because they're not doing anything about it, it keeps getting normalized around the world. And then we see that in person. And that's exactly what's happened on this trajectory. Wow, see, told you, early morning, since October 7th, unfortunately.
Now, I think probably why you're saying that in Bahrain, the UAE, and obviously Saudi as well, let's talk about Saudi, who may be the key to peace around the Middle East. I don't exaggerate. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. But the idea that anti-Semitism is lighter in those countries of Muslim theocracy, let's just say they are dictatorships, they are a top-down kingdom, and they are, at the moment, good kings. You know, we have a very tolerant set of kings across the Gulf, is that they recognize that the Palestinian cause is secular and political. And during Ramadan, we have noticed...
Even if it's not secular, there is a secular side, the more communist side, like the PFLP terror group. Sure. But of course, there's also the Islamist side we see with Hamas. So it's really both. And you mentioned that they're quite good kings now in those countries for now. Let's hope it stays that way. Yeah. But they are not accepting this Islamism. You know, they know how dangerous it is in their countries.
And that's the thing. During Ramadan, I noticed that around the the main temples of Saudi Arabia, there was a Palestinian flag put up, and it was hurried down because they recognize that that is different from their form of Islam. And I guess what we might appeal to the Muslim community in the UK and around the world is that there is more than one way of looking at your Islam. It doesn't have to be hijacked by Islamism, which seems to appear from the outside what is going on in that religion, particularly in the West, but not the East.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head. This is precisely the problem. And you know what? That is an organized effort. A lot of it is coming from the Islamic Republic of Iran, especially in London. They are operating freely and unchecked. Part of the reason for that is because they won't designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization and enforce the laws that we already know the IRGC qualifies. There's already legal precedent for it. And yet still, the European Union, of course, and also the UK aren't actually taking action on this issue. And so these terrorists and their terrorist supporters and the enablers of Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, all of these organizations are allowed to operate pretty much freely, all their supporters on the streets. And unfortunately, as I saw yesterday, there was a protest against Israel and a counter-protest, which I was there. But the police are hard on the Jewish community They're not hard on the opposite side. You know, when someone came over to our side, they just talked to them. And when someone went to the other side, they're like, no, 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 you can't be here. Now, of course, part of that is they don't want anyone to get hurt. And I respect that. And I appreciate that they came and that they did protect both sides. But there is a difference in how they're treating the two sides. And that's very problematic. And it's the same pattern we've seen in previous protests as well.
Which brings us to the subject of your protest yesterday, which was at Mornington Crescent, which is a part of Camden in London. And it was approximately the first place in the world where the kidnapped posters were actually ripped down by locals. And we were horrified. And of course, because it was captured on Instagram, everyone around the world thought, hey, that's a good idea. And the kidnapped posters start getting ripped down absolutely everywhere. And you talk about people being arrested for upholding the law or making it out. And you were there with your friend. And I mentioned this on the show, my very fervent protest against what the police did in arresting Niak Gorbani. Now, Niak Gorbani is not Jewish. He's not Israeli. In fact, he is a Persian. He's an Iranian. And perhaps he knows, as a dissident of the Iranian Islamic regime, more than anyone, the dangers of the Islamic theocracy. And you were with him yesterday, weren't you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that the work that Niak has done is amazing, but not just him. You know, this is a pattern that we see with almost all of the Iranian diaspora. Whether or not they agree with every single action of the state of Israel, that's not the point. The point is that they know what's happening. They see the full picture, and most of the West does not. Most of the West is saying, oh, well, it's between Israel and Palestinians or Arabs and Jews. No, it's not. This war is a greater war. It's between the forces and the agenda of the Islamic Republic of Iran and Israel, but beyond just Israel, the West. And they, the Islamic Republic, have made that very, very clear. That is what they're doing with all these terror proxies. And unfortunately, I think people in the UK need to wake up a little bit, because the UK is absolutely a target of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And we're kind of sitting here in the West like, oh, well, that's their problem. No, it's not. It's your problem too.